With other people, like this blind man or even Paul that we brought up earlier, they weren't getting better. They weren't on a track to get better, but he still says, I know you will have faith. I'm yanking you out of this situation. I'm stepping in and interceding, changing your life in a way that you couldn't have on your own. The glory of God is going to be shown in this life. How bad it was, that's going to magnify how good it is.
You're listening to If That Makes Sense. It's Family Life's podcast about what life is like following Jesus. We're following him through the book of John right now. My name's Tim. I'm in Family Life's radio department.
I'm Merri. I'm in Family Life's radio production department.
I'm Jesse. I'm in Family Life's radio department.
This is, I think, the first time in a long time we've done anything like an official part 2 episode.
Yeah, but that's kind of where we are right now.
And yeah, like I usually like for every episode people to just, that you can be listening and you don't have to have heard all the ones that came before. I'd say that's probably still true. You can probably listen to this on its own. It will help you to have the most context if you hear the episode that came just before this one. But hey, that's you. That's your time. And this is your podcast you get to listen to. And so we're doing John chapter 9, verse 13 through 41. And Jesus has already done the healing, but this is actually kind of where it gets really interesting. The healing is wild. He puts mud on a man's eyes to give him sight when he's been blind his literal entire life. And it's really interesting because last episode we saw the disciples have this preconceived notion that this man must have been blind because there was some sin that caused it, right? And Jesus corrected that and healed him in a really obscure way. So we're going to look at kind of more of the fallout of what happens after that guy who got healed. He goes back to the people who knew him before when he was still blind, and they don't believe it. They can hardly believe what happened, that this man can see now. And so now they're going to take him to the Jewish authorities. Oh, what fun, right?
It always gets interesting with the Jewish authorities. They're characters, recurring characters in the Gospels.
Gotta love the conflict.
Yeah.
Makes it interesting.
They are winding it up for us and going to knock it out of the park as far as conflict goes. So I'll start us off in John 9:13. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Some of the Pharisees said, This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others said, How can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was a division among them. So they said again to the blind man, What do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes? He said, He is a prophet. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered, We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But how he now sees we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age. He will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue.
For this reason, his parents said, He is of age, ask him. So a second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. He then answered, Whether he is a sinner I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. So they said to him, What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You do not want to become his disciples too, do you? They reviled him and said, You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses. But as for this man, we do not know where he is from. The man answered and said to them, Well, here is an amazing thing, that you do not know where he is from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he hears him. Since the beginning of time, it has never been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing.
They answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." He said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, "Are we also blind?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say, 'We see,' your guilt remains."
What are you first thinking about after having read that?
I just thought, I guess it makes sense that when you've been blind your entire life and suddenly you can see, you're on top of the world. This guy's just, he doesn't care who he's talking to. He's so sassy with the Pharisees. And understandably, too. He's like, I can see. What? Come on. This is the best day of my life.
Sassy is exactly the word I was going to use.
That is really funny. That's so funny. I'm thinking, I'm feeling a little bit of compassion for him because, he just received his sight. He could be going anywhere and doing anything, that he has wanted to do his whole life. He's never been able to see before. Surely he has things he wants to look at. And here he is debating with Pharisees because they don't believe him and making him repeat things that he's like, I already told you. Why are you asking me?
Yeah.
And his parents are like, I don't know. He's an adult. Ask him.
He's an adult. Ask him, yeah. Well, what? Who healed you? Who healed you? I don't know. Some guy. Well, where is he from? I don't know. Go ask him. I can see.
Right. I'll never probably read this passage exactly the same way after the last recording we did on part 1. I never thought about this, but Becky brought it up, that he didn't know what Jesus looked like.
Oh, yeah. That's
point.
very
Good point.
obviously true, but I never thought of it either.
Right. Because Jesus doesn't heal him in front of him. He puts mud on his eyes and says, now go and wash it off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Presumably, the guy goes by himself or with somebody to help him to the pool to get washed. But then he can see, and he's like, hey, this is great. Oh, yeah, where'd Jesus go? He still doesn't know what the guy looked like.
Yeah.
He just knows his name. He's just going to tell him like it is. He's just going to tell the Pharisees like it is.
I don't know what you want me to tell you. He healed me. That's pretty significant.
Mhm.
I would start rethinking things here, guys. But it's interesting. So with a lot of other healings that Jesus does, and you guys might have touched on this before, but context, most of the time in the scriptures, you have somebody coming up to Jesus and humbling themselves and having faith and saying, can you please heal me of this thing? I believe that you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
And Jesus heals them and says, I'm doing this because of your faith. This guy never asks to be healed.
Oh.
His disciples just say, well, this man, there must be sin. His parents must have been pretty bad people because he's blind, right? And Jesus says, no, it's because I've been wanting to use him as an example to show the glory of God. So he gives the blind man an opportunity to show his faith, to demonstrate faith by saying, hey, I'm going to rub spit and mud in your eyes.
Oh.
If you have faith, go wash this in the pool and you'll be made well.
Ooh.
And so now this guy, he gets that opportunity to show a bit of faith. And like you said, now after he's done it, everybody's just swarming him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going, I don't know who that was. I don't know what he looks like. Go ask him yourself.
I have never, ever thought about that before. That's really wild. It is a different healing that Jesus never does this for anybody else.
Yeah.
He does it. He almost, it's like he does his miracles in a different way every time, kind of. But that's a great point, Jesse, that he usually is being approached by somebody who their very request demonstrates their faith. And maybe it's something we could say that Jesus, there's a caveat here, question mark, fact check this, but does Jesus ever do a miracle without somebody showing faith in him first? Even the loaves and the fishes, the little boy brings the lunch and offers it in some way. And when other people ask to be healed, that's really cool. Never thought about that. I'm going to have to chew on that. I like it. I like it a lot.
That's a chewer.
This guy did not ask for it, so Jesus gave him the opportunity. Like, okay, here's a healing in progress. Now you take it the rest of the way with your faith, if you have the faith.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
then afterwards, the guy's like, well, this has to be from God. Like, this has never happened before, you know? So there's truth here.
And what a testimony he has because of that. I mean, surprise, surprise, Jesus was right. This thing is absolutely to the glory of God, because this man gets this opportunity to have this amazing testimony, and it wouldn't have been there if everything didn't work out exactly the way it was. Like, everybody's flabbergasted. I find it kind of interesting that to them, like, there's a distinction between kinds of healings. They're like, well, it's not just like he healed a blind guy. He healed a guy born blind. He's always been blind. He didn't just bring back his sight. He
never had it to begin with.
Yeah.
He did the work of God. He created out of nothing. He didn't just fix something that was broken. He made a new thing. I mean, we're talking Messiah level healing here, people. Come on, see it, Pharisees.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is my favorite one-liner, I think, in the whole Bible, because I think we get to use it all over the place for ourselves. One thing I do know, the man says, that though I was blind, now I see.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good one. That's a slam dunk right there.
It is.
It's like, you can't deny. Everyone knows this guy has been blind from birth. Like, there was never a point where he wasn't.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he can see. And that can't be explained away by some trickery or little fake magic or anything like that.
Yes.
He was blind. Or even, like, nowadays, you couldn't explain that through, like, doctors and, like, medical healing and stuff. I mean, yeah, we've come a long way, but I don't know that it would be possible for someone born blind to gain their sight at any point.
Yeah.
Like, that is just God. Like, you can't explain it away with anything.
Yeah. You can't explain the miracle away with anything. And the other thing that, like, I think is so cool what we can do today is you can't argue with someone else's experience.
Mm-hmm.
He's giving a apologetic here, an argument for the faith that the Pharisees cannot argue against because it's his personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I am the one who was blind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you I can see now, all right? You can't falsify that. This is my own what he did for me story. And we really do, I guess pun intended, we do lose sight today of how powerful that is. And I mean, I use the pun intentionally because John plays around a lot here with sight and blindness and sight, and the Pharisees are actually the blind ones in this story. And we forget, like, I forget constantly that, Tim, you can talk to people about Jesus like this.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell them, hey, here's what happened.
This is my personal experience. Yeah.
Take it or leave it. Happened for me, though.
Mm-hmm.
It happened for me. And I know you can't argue with that. You might not accept it for you. All right, that's on you. But you can't argue with what happened for me. I'm telling you, I was blind. I'm seeing now.
Right. Well, and there's so much value in, like, recognizing those moments in your life when the solution or the peace or whatever it is could only be explained through God's power and mercy and love. And there's so much value in, like, writing it down and telling people about it, because that is the best tool that we have to share God's love with other people, is being like, hey, this happened to me. And those stories are so powerful.
Mm-hmm. They are. And we've got to give them enough credit. Like, your story, your life story isn't yours. Don't, like, think, oh, is my story good enough to share? No, is God's story good enough to share? Your life isn't, you're not the one writing it. He's writing it. I feel like I'm stealing from both of you when I say this, because you just said it, Merri, and Jesse, you talk about how God writes stories, like, all the time. And I love that, because, like, your life is he's an author.
Yeah.
If you share what he did for you, you're not bragging on you. You're bragging on God. Like, it's a story. It's worth using.
And I think whenever you introduce God into the story, the supernatural element, and try to tell people about that personal experience, like we see even in this story, people trying their best to explain it away, but finding it difficult. There's people saying, no, well, it wasn't actually the guy born blind. It just looked like him. The Pharisees are trying to get to the bottom of it and say, like, well, I mean, he can't be from God. So what happened here? He's healing on the Sabbath, so he's a sinner. So who healed you? What happened? Trying to get to the bottom of this thing, but refusing to find God at the bottom. You know, they're trying to find a solid foundation to stand on that's just not there. They don't want to step on the rock that's already in the situation.
Ooh.
And it's sad to watch. And I do wonder if some of the Pharisees eventually, after seeing all this stuff, you have to imagine one or two of them were like,
all right,
you know what?
We really can't ignore this any longer.
Well, we kind of know that was happening a little bit. Verse 16 says there was a division among them.
Yeah.
And we can imagine, Jesse, I know you've been a part of the episodes where we talked about Nicodemus several times.
Yeah.
I'm picturing Nicodemus in the background, kind of like sowing the seeds and stoking the flame.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm not sure if anybody else. I mean, I was just looking at the healing records the other day, and I don't see and hear anybody else being healed blind from birth. Just saying.
Yeah. Well,
Just want to drop this little tidbit in Isaiah.
Right.
Yeah. Come to restore sight to the blind. Perhaps. Yeah. No. And I wonder, because we lump all the Pharisees together as being one collective group that always thinks the same, but there was division among them, and I'm sure that there were some who, maybe even later on after Jesus rose from the dead, were like, I remember when he healed that blind guy, and now everybody's saying that he's up and about and he's alive. There's something to this.
Yes. We know there's Nicodemus. Paul comes out of basically the farm school, the training for Pharisees.
Yeah. He wasn't a Pharisee, but he was basically.
Yeah.
Well, he described himself as like, I am the Navy SEAL of the Jews. Like, I am as Jewish as it gets. I've got all my scripture memorized.
I got it.
I got straight A's.
He was on the fast track to Pharisee career success. Like, he was going to be the golden boy. And Jesus got him instead.
And that is so cool, thinking that how even today we see the Pharisees as they're the bad guys. And none of us we always use the Pharisees as the bad example, but God still uses them and redeems them when they accept it. Even, sure, he hung out with sinners and tax collectors and prostitutes and, all of the people of the day who were seen as the evil ones, and he redeemed them. And now we look back and we see, the Pharisees are the bad guys, but he was redeeming them too.
Yeah.
He loves every single one of his children, no matter what side of the spectrum you're on. If you are sinning and you're doing all of the things aren't right, God loves you. And if you're on the opposite side of the spectrum, you are so gung-ho about following tradition and doing all the right things, but you've lost your heart and you've lost the love of everything. He still wants to redeem you.
Yeah.
On either side.
Yes.
Which is so cool.
It is so cool. We talk about how often Merri that he's arguing with the Pharisees in these episodes.
Yeah, he gets real mean to them sometimes.
Yeah, but they say the opposite of love is indifference. And he's not indifferent. He's he's fighting with them. He's also kind of fighting for them.
Yeah.
Because if they would just put it down, give it up, you'll see. Like Jesse said, he's the rock. Stand on him. He's at the bottom of this. You're trying to get to the bottom of it? It's me. He's trying to tell them over and over again, I am the one your whole religion is for. So he wouldn't spend so much time arguing with them just for he's not like doing this to try to get clicks or something. Like,
Right,
oh,
yeah.
look at my another hot take with the Pharisees here. He's not just arguing for the sake of spectacle. He's trying to get this right.
He's trying to get their attention.
Yeah.
Well, he even says at the bottom of verse or chapter 9, he says to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt, but now that you say we see, your guilt remains." Basically saying it's not that you haven't seen the truth, it's that you're saying, no, we've got it. We've got the truth. That's the problem. It's not so much that you haven't seen me, it's that you have seen me and claim you've got something better.
Yeah. Like,
And-
you don't get it.
You don't understand it. But it's interesting too how with many people that Jesus encounters, he has them step out and make the first move and kind of take a leap of faith toward him and say, "Will you please heal me? Will you please save me?" With other people, like this blind man or even Paul that we brought up earlier, they weren't getting better. They weren't on a track to get better, but he still says, "I know you will have faith. I'm yanking you out of this situation. I'm stepping in and interceding, changing your life in a way that you couldn't have on your own, because I know that there's the glory of God is going to be shown in this life." Almost like how bad it was, that's going to magnify how good it is now. And I just find it super interesting how he does that with some people, and with others, they make the first move, but he always knows what we need to find him, you know?
But what I'm taking away from what I heard you say today, Jesse, and I'm holding on to this. I think it's really good. He makes them respond to him.
Yeah.
Whether their response basically comes first or if their response comes second, because even as you just mentioned, Paul, when he saves Paul, he shows up to him in a miraculous way in a story that regrettably we won't get to touch in the book of John, but an Acts series would be fun sometime. But Paul then has to go, and Jesus commands Paul to do something. Now it's in Paul's court.
Right,
Is he
yeah.
gonna
It always
follow?
comes back to, you know, whether God acts first or you, will you follow me?
Will you respond?
Will you respond?
Here I am. Now what are you going to do with me?
Mhm.
Go wash this mud off of your eyes. If you think that's too silly, all right. Or,
Yeah, because it's not like he could see, so having mud on his eyes wasn't that big of a deal for him.
True. He's like, you know what?
He just has dirt on his face.
Not the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
it was spit mud, which is weird, but it
Yep.
wasn't the worst thing. Actually, let's talk about spit mud for a second.
Let's go back to that.
Let's go back to the spit mud. Let's not be done with that because it's the last time we get to talk about it in the book of John, and we don't want to let it go too soon because it's pretty interesting.
You don't get spit mud every day.
Yeah, don't get spit mud every day.
Can we stop saying spit mud?
We could.
We could,
You
but
just said it again.
I did,
so.
I know.
Why? Well, we won't talk about why Jesus did it because I don't know. But I do know this. Or at least I'll conjecture this. It seems like there's part of this that really irks the Pharisees. Like, I don't think Jesus did it just to irritate them, but like to them, it seems like it's some extra part to them where it makes it like he broke the law. He made mud. Is that like making clay? Because that would be work, you know. And that would break the Sabbath
can't do
laws,
that.
you know. Where's the line? And I don't know if that's what they're getting mad about or if it's just the fact that Jesus healed the guy on the Sabbath. that
they
they're
always
getting
had
mad
a big
about.
problem with that. Yeah.
They don't like that either, which is ironic and funny for a number of reasons. But let's be clear, whether it was over rubbing, there's no easy way to say it, saliva in dirt.
There's no beating around the bush
Either it
here.
was making that and making mud out of that little mixture there, or if it was out of healing, either way, there is no real case that Jesus broke the Sabbath.
No.
He just didn't. He didn't break the Sabbath. But their interpretation of the Sabbath was something that they could not stand. They could not imagine that this guy could possibly be from God if he was living in a way that didn't line up with their rules for God. That seems to be the thing that kind of comes back to a lot with the Pharisees. It's like they have the rules for the way you need to approach God.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go outside of their understanding of God and of how you approach God, then we've got to write you off, they say.
Yeah.
Then you can't be from God. And that's the thing. Over and over and over again, they will bend over backwards to keep from acknowledging Jesus could be from God. Because, first of all, they say, was this guy even blind in the first place? Let's find his parents. They can tell us. Then the parents tell him, yeah, he's been blind his whole life. I just don't know how he sees now. And then they call the man back in and question him a second time.
He's like, I was just watching the most beautiful sunset, first one I've ever seen. You drag me in here.
Drag me in here? Ask me this question again?
I already told you.
And it's like, they can't imagine that it's possible that this could have really happened. So now they're like, maybe this whole family's just liars. Maybe they're all just liars. You know,
Maybe that's why he was born blind, is because they just won't stop lying.
And that's the other thing too. They're like, well, maybe it's a sin thing. You were born in utter sin. They tell the guy.
Yeah.
Which
Right
is
off the bat.
crazy because that was the assumption that Jesus' own disciples had earlier in the chapter. They see the guy and they ask Jesus. Their first question they ask Jesus is, who sinned? Whose sin is it?
What'd he do?
Yeah, what did he do or what did his parents do that he's been blind his whole life? And we get into that in the last episode, which is a fun thing to listen to. But it's basically, the important part here is like people's misunderstanding of how God works is what blinds them to seeing God work right now. People thinking they already see God with perfect clarity is what keeps them, ironically, from actually seeing God right in front of them.
If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say we see, your guilt remains. It's not that you are blind to God. That's not the problem. It's that you have made God in your own image, in a way.
Yeah.
And that's...
Well, and any time you try to shove God in a box, it's just not going to work, first of all. And second of all, you're only hurting yourself.
You don't have a big enough box.
Nope.
You don't.
Just,
Get a bigger box.
no matter what kind of box you got, it's not big enough. Sorry.
Nope. Not going to work. God box doesn't fit.
I once heard, I don't know if this is really relevant necessarily to the specific story, but I once heard God described as a diamond, like a cut diamond with light shining through it. And there's all these different sides, and you can look at God from one side of this diamond, and you're like, wow, he's so loving. He has so much love, and as you turn it, you go, oh, but he also is full of mercy, and oh, but he's a just God, and there's just so much about him that we can't possibly wrap our brains around it because there's just so many different sides of God and his character.
Yes. I love that. And that I'm picturing that diamond here and taking it a step further, that a diamond refracts light into all the different colors. All the different colors of the rainbow. You add them all up, they equal white light, the original light source. And so it's like, you can never see two things that are true about God, even if they're different things, that contradict each other. God's wrath and God's mercy are like, well, that's red and blue right there. Well, they don't contradict each other. They both come from the same pure source,
Right.
which is who he is. What contradicts is light and dark. You're not going to find any darkness in God. There is not going to be any absence of light in this perfect diamond that God is. And I'm probably getting to the point where I'll stretch the metaphor too far if I try to take light and diamonds and refracting light any further. But it's a really good thought, and it's definitely at play in a chapter like this where you're realizing, I don't want to do the Pharisee thing where I take one side of how I see God and say, no, everybody else, this is the only way to see him and understand him through my lens. I want to look at the bigger picture Jesus has. What if we went real quick to the last, my translation has it as a paragraph, but I'm just going to read the first part of this. This struck me. It always kind of does. Jesus heard that they had cast him out. And having found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" That kind of like this is kind of interesting part of this episode that Jesus hears about it.
Mm-hmm.
He's somewhere else. He finds
He's
out.
like,
and
they
then
did what?
Yeah. But then he goes,
Really? God, come on, guys.
Give the guy a break. I'm going to go talk to him.
but that's the thing. And then he goes and he seeks him out. It's like,
how many times
Interesting.
does Jesus seek out someone else
I don't know.
either?
It's not
Like-
super common.
Because I'm not even thinking of one example, because every story that I can think of, the people who need Jesus come find him. But in this case, the guy who was blind didn't know who to look for. So he's just kind of wandering around, I'm imagining.
He's not even going to recognize Jesus when he shows up.
And so some guy comes over and he's just like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?"
Right.
You know?
Hey, do you believe in the Son of Man?
He literally says to that, "Who is he that I may believe in
Yeah,
him?"
Yeah.
point me in the direction.
Right.
Yeah.
And isn't that interesting, Merri, that what you're saying is the second half of what Jesse said earlier, that Jesus went and found this guy when he was begging on the street and was like, "I'm going to heal you if you have faith to respond to what I'm doing."
Mm-hmm.
And then after this guy gets healed, Jesus finds him again. I've never thought about that. That this guy gets double
Found.
by Jesus. It's just, I think it's immensely valuable for us that we have this, that we have this man's story. It is the greatest testimony for God's glory, both what he was able to say to the Pharisees, and then that Jesus he finds this man so that he doesn't just have a vague general knowledge of God healed me through some prophet. He specifically finds him so he can tell him, "I want you to know who to credit for that. I want you to know who to place your hope and trust in for this."
I imagine, so he comes, I'm imagining steps. He's leaving the synagogue. Down the steps, Jesus is like, "Oh, they kicked you out because you bought it, right? And you believed in the Son of Man." He's like, "Oh, I don't even know who it is." "Well, he's me." And the Pharisees overhearing this, are because they're in the second half of that bottom paragraph.
Right,
They're like, "Wait, what are you saying about us? You're saying, are we the blind people in your little analogy there?" And again, circles back. I've said it a couple times already. But yeah, it's not that you're blind; it's that you refuse to see in a way, you know?
I just want to add that I think this story is a really good reminder that God pursues us. We've been talking about how Jesus came and pursued this man twice, which in and of itself is like seemingly a pretty big deal. But we can apply that to our lives too and say, even if we don't know what's going on, God is pursuing us and he's got a plan and he's thinking about us and taking care of us even when we don't see him. See what I did there?
Thank you for joining us for If That Makes Sense, the family life podcast about what life is really like as a young adult following Jesus. If you enjoy the show, please send it to a friend. Your genuine appreciation of the show is the best way for word to get out. And it would make our day if you left us a rating and a review wherever you found this episode. Family Life has more great original podcasts that you can check out at familylife.org/podcast. Thanks again, and we look forward to having you along for the next one.